Bill, first of all, great to meet you. With what's going on in the world right now, this is the way to do things over the Zoom. So pleasure.
Yeah, it'd be more fun to meet at Fenway Park, but maybe
Yeah,
that'll be in the future.
yeah. I wanted to ask you first of all, everybody that's connected in baseball, I think we have great stories. First baseball memory, I know for me, really got me to love doing what I do and getting into baseball. Do you have something similar that really triggered you to want to be in baseball and dedicate your life to this?
Well, I'm not in in baseball. I write a lot about baseball.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm just a super fan, and I enjoy the stories. And the more I dig into it, the more I find I enjoy it. I have been fortunate to have time to be able to do that. Where it all began, I don't really know.
Yeah.
I'm old enough that when I grew up, the other sports weren't that dominant.
Yep.
Baseball really was the national pastime. There were no such things as computers to distract us. My son couldn't play a video game because they didn't exist.
Yeah.
Now he keeps himself quite busy playing video games and not paying much attention to baseball. But it's just, I started going to games by myself by the time I was 11 or 12 years old. I grew up in Lexington, which at that time took me about an hour to get to Fenway Park on the subway. And so for $1, I could go round trip and buy a 50-cent bleacher ticket.
Yeah.
It was a different era.
Yeah, and I've always thought of how many people who grew up Red Sox and Yankees fans were influenced to work in baseball, write about baseball. It's really amazing if you think about the influence. And I know that Fenway has a lot to do with my passion. When you walk in there, it's a different animal, and it makes you it turns you into a fan right away, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what it would be if I'd grown up in a park that was brand new.
Yeah.
That didn't already have, and by the time I started going there, it was already 40 or 50 years old. I already knew that Babe Ruth had played there. Ty Cobb had played there.
Yeah.
In my era, Ted Williams was my hero, and I got to see the last few years of his time, and then many people since.
Yeah, that's great stuff. So with SABR that you're part of, I think that's really blown up over the years, and all of the research that SABR's done and provided. And baseball is a numbers game. It's even gotten more of a numbers game, but talk a little bit about being part of that organization.
Yeah, I joined it in the 1980s briefly for some reason, and it didn't do much for me. So after a year or two, I kind of dropped out. But then in the late 1990s, I started working on a book about Ted Williams. I had connected with a guy named Jim Prime from Nova Scotia that knew Ted. He'd worked on a book together called Ted Williams Hit List. The two of them put that together, and I enthused, wow, you got to be a co-author with Ted Williams.
Yeah.
And, what more could you hope for in life? But then he and I decided to do a book that was a tribute to Ted Williams. And what we did is we interviewed 200 people that had known him at one time or another through his life, from John Glenn, who was a Marine Corps fighter pilot with him during the Korean War, to certainly baseball players. They talked to more than half the living members of the Hall of Fame in the course of the book, but also other people. I talked to two guys that were a barber that cut his hair that just happened to have good stories. People from all walks of life. It was just fascinating, and a lot of SABR connections helped there. I found out that SABR was this group. We're now a little over 6,000 members, and there's a directory. If you're a member, you can look up people and find their interests and sort them that way. So I was able to connect with a bunch of people. Then we put on a national convention in Boston in the year 2002, and I joined the group that was putting it on, and that's what really dragged me in. Was working on that convention and having, we had about 500 to 600 people that came and just sit around talking about baseball all day, all night. And then we went to a game, of course.
Yep.
And it's grown since that time. It's a really, not everybody in it is a scholar or a researcher. Most of us are just fans.
Yep.
That enjoy the conversation and meetings and so forth.
So what kind of things does SABR do, just for the general fan out there?
Well, almost anything. You mentioned statistics. It got known for a while as because of sabermetrics, a statistical way of looking at the game, trying to quantify probabilities. And many of the people there's whole analytics departments now that most major league teams have just to study that type of thing. For better or for worse, some people will say there's too much analytics in the game and therefore there's too many walks because the pitchers are exceptionally careful to this batter or that batter, and the game isn't exciting as it used to be. This games certainly take longer. We know that.
Yeah.
But there's my interest has been more in biography. I've just enjoyed writing up these brief 5, 6, 7-page biographies that we write of former ball players. We have a games project where we write up specific games. Just the first game I wrote up happened to be the first game I took, well, deliberately, happened to be the first game I took my son to. I have no idea the first game I ever went to because my father wasn't a SABR member and he didn't write it up. He didn't write a note about it. I asked him once, what was the first game? He said, I don't know. Your grandfather was a big baseball fan. Okay, well, I would like to pin it down a little more and know that, the game I was at, Jimmy Fox hit a home run or whatever the case might have been.
Yeah.
I just won't know that. Nothing dramatic happened at the game my son went to, but it's written up for posterity now. And if he ever cares someday, I'll share it with him.
Yeah. No, I know that I've got some old ticket stubs, and if you go on Baseball Reference, you can find the box scores, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. We're doing a book on baseball tickets now coming up for next year, a book or a web project. I don't know quite what it'll be, but all kinds of looks at tickets and ticketing. I understand the Red Sox this year will not be issuing tickets. If when the games become open, you'll just be able to get in through your phone.
Yeah.
And that type of thing. There won't actually be paper tickets, which I guess is good because you're not handing somebody something that might be infected with the virus or whatever. But
yeah, and I could see this happening just because of costs, like ticket stock's expensive. Right. Yeah.
Yep.
You know how it all works. Yeah.
We have a Latino baseball committee. We have a women in baseball committee. We have a 19th century baseball committee that looks back at the older days. We have, I don't know, almost anything you could think of a way to slice and dice a look at baseball. We have Asian baseball, minor league baseball.
Nice.
Try to think, it's not worth going down the list. They're all on the SABR.org website.
It seems like baseball has more layers to it than any sport, doesn't it?
Well, it's been around for a long time and more in the forefront for a longer period of time. And I think there's something about it that attracts people that like to read or research. I don't know quite what it is. It's maybe the one-on-one confrontation between the batter and the pitcher, as opposed to these other sports that have almost constant motion. I mean, football, 22 guys crash into each other and fall down and the ball moves ahead or doesn't.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's hard to pin down the statistics. I mean, you can get, yards carried and yards thrown for passes and things of that sort, but it's more difficult to quantify in some ways.
But even like old football stadiums, I don't think people care about, we don't ever talk about, I mean, the facilities are nice, but you don't look at stadiums in football the way you do in baseball. It's just different.
Well, that might be you and I though. And some of the people with this podcast here, but 50 years from now, we'll see that might have changed.
Yeah. Cause there's so many new stadiums
and just people change.
Yeah.
Things change.
Yep.
I mean, baseball has a little bit of a crisis now, I think, because the games are just going on too long.
Yeah. And, so, it's interesting. I don't, and I've worked in baseball forever. I don't know the solution. I think we can sit here and say we should do this and that. I just don't see how you can chop the game. Everything I've heard, it's not going to take a lot of time off. I don't know what the solution is unless you take a couple of innings off.
Well, that would be one thing. I'd not like to see that happen.
No.
Just making the game work faster. A pitch clock would help.
Sure.
Not letting batters step out of the batter box. If the players themselves reoriented themselves to moving faster, it's a more exciting game.
Sure.
It used to be players ran off the field and ran to their positions and were ready and stepped right into the batter's box. I'd be studying the game from 1930, and it said this game was the longest game of the year. And then you look at it, it was 2 hours and 12 minutes long or something.
Yeah.
It wasn't uncommon to have games at or just under 2 hours.
But the TV and radio, they're not willing to shorten, there's a little, I think it's a tough dilemma. a lot of super fans I talk to though don't seem to care. I think it's more in our circles that care more. A lot of the diehards, when you go to Fenway Park, I don't think people really, if you're going 2 or 3 times a year, I don't think you care how long the game is.
Well, you don't want to leave, really.
Yeah,
You want to,
yeah.
if it goes into extra innings, that's bonus baseball.
But I get it though. You don't want to have
Yeah.
games bleed into, network news, which I'm sure is costing networks some money. But let's get into the writing. I like the topics that you tackle. I mean, a book about blowouts is the latest. We always look at no hitters, perfect games, but this is interesting because the blowout and some of the ones you have in the book can be as rare as a no hitter.
Oh yeah, yeah. It just depends where you draw the line. I mean,
yeah.
What is a blowout? 6-1 isn't really a blowout. That's But what we did for this book, and I'll hold the book up so everybody can see it.
Yeah, this is for our YouTube.
Baseball's biggest blowout games. It just happens to be Fenway Park on the front cover, and it just happens to be a game that I enjoyed writing up from 1950. The final score being 29-4.
Yeah,
I suspect everybody would agree that's a blowout.
Yes.
And it would be the mercy rule would have applied if it were a little league game or something of that sort. But I mean, it was just, an incredible game. Nobody scored in the first inning, but then the Red Sox scored 8 runs in the bottom of the second, 5 runs in the third, 7 runs in the fourth inning, 2 runs in the fifth inning, and then nobody scored again in the sixth.
Yeah.
But then they had to add 7 more runs, and if they had a chance to bat in the bottom of the ninth, they would have added some more probably.
Yeah.
The St. Louis Browns were not. It was a tough day for the Browns.
Yeah. No. What? 4 runs on 8 hits?
4 runs on 8 hits. Yeah, and they made an error. The Red Sox didn't help them out with any errors.
It's weird about some of the blowout games that I've been a part of or seen. They sometimes go quick because they get a lot of runs in bunches. Now, in the games in the 20s, I'm sure that they take a little bit while. But what made you go down that road? Was it just something that we just haven't seen? It's just something different that you thought?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned no hitters. I did a book on no hitters with SABR. We just got people to tell each SABR book. I mean, this one has 77 members that contributed to it. That's another nice thing about SABR is we welcome writers and researchers. So not quite 100, but 77 different people wrote up a game or a story for this book. And if you're young and just starting out, and you want to build up a resume, get a chance to get published in a book. It's not a bad thing. I don't know where this particular game idea came from. We have another one coming out in a month or so on the greatest comeback games.
Nice.
And then we have a book coming out sometime later this year on one-hit wonders, players that only ever got 1 hit during their major league career.
Obviously, wow.
Obviously not a long career.
Yeah.
But some of them were pitchers that may have appeared in 50 or 60 games that just only ever had 1 hit.
Yeah, that's cool.
For the blowout games, the way we did it is there's a group called Retro Sheet that keeps tracks of every major league game that they can get any information on. You can look up and get play-by-play or data about the game. There's a guy named Tom Ruane that works for them, and I just asked him, could you put together the biggest run differential games and rank order them? And that's what we did. This was 29-4, this Red Sox Browns game. That's a 25 run differential that made the top of the list. And we just went down the list and saw the games that were the biggest, most lopsided games, the most one-sided blowouts. We got to a certain point and I realized I wanted to make sure every team was represented. So, if we got down to some that were, 14-2 or even 11-2, and there still wasn't an Arizona Diamondbacks win in there, I went and found the biggest blowout game that the Diamondbacks ever had. And
I like
we
that.
read that in the book. And then we put in, I don't know, 7 or 8 postseason games just to give some representation there as well.
Yeah. I remember that Red Sox Marlins game. I remember Jack McKeon being very upset. And
that was an interesting game. I had season tickets at that time, and I gave them to somebody else. And I asked them, what was that like afterwards? The Red Sox scored 14 runs in the first inning.
Yeah.
14 runs in the first inning, 10 runs before they even made an out.
Just think of the people who showed up late, right?
Well, yeah, you figure out, show up at the end of the second inning,
Yeah.
and I'll still get in the game. And, all of a sudden there is no game in a sense.
Yeah. That just really, I think it deflates the players too. For the Marlins, you just,
It wasn't good enough. The game ended 25-8.
yeah.
That wasn't good enough to make the book.
Yep.
Because it was a 17-run differential, and the Red Sox I didn't want to overrepresent any game. No team could have more than 4 games. The Red Sox had 4 games that were 18 or greater.
Yeah.
So it didn't make the book, except in the introduction when I had to mention it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. That's good stuff. And, I was thinking too, when you brought up Ted Williams, this kind of off topic, it's interesting that there's not been a movie about him.
Yep. There's 1 or 2 people that have taken options on a movie about his life, but nobody's ever made it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just got everything, I think. He was one of the greatest hitters who ever lived. He's certainly in the top, got the best on base percentage of anybody that ever played. And
yeah.
He's up there in home runs and batting average and almost anything you could want. And that's despite losing almost 5 full years to service in World War II. He flew fighter jets with John Glenn. They were in the same 32-man squadron during the Korean War. He was actually shot at. His plane was shot down at one point. And he crash landed it.
Crazy, huh?
And then he was I can remember from growing up in my younger days, and his influence still goes on with the Jimmy Fund.
Yeah.
In Boston to fight cancer in children. He helped, in 1947, he helped launch the Jimmy Fund. And he was on the board of directors for ages into the 60s and all. And the tradition of the Red Sox and their support of the Jimmy Fund continues today.
Yeah. I had the privilege of talking to Mel Allen probably 25, 30 years ago. And he said that he would fish with Ted Williams, that they were friends. Like,
he's in the Fishing Hall of Fame as well as Baseball Hall of Fame. There's 2 or 3 things he did exceptionally well. And he devoted his life to being the best he could be. It inspired me when I was working on this book that I mentioned. We ended up naming it in its 2nd edition, Ted Williams, The Pursuit of Perfection.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that struck out to me is he said, I want to be good at this and I want to be the best I could be at it.
Yeah.
And he inspired people to just try hard. And if you're not succeeding, try harder.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that doesn't always work, but it's something I try to keep in mind when I get bogged down in an article.
Yeah.
Okay, come on. I can do better.
You have the Ted Williams influence. Yeah. Great. Yeah. It's almost like a fictional character. And I've always thought that Babe Ruth doesn't seem real. When you grow up, when you're young and you look back, you're like, this guy was real. He pointed, all of the folk hero stuff about him. It doesn't seem like a real person.
Yeah, and he wrote the introduction in one of his books. He wrote the introduction to the film. He said, if they ever do a film about me, here's the way it's going to begin. And it was him in his F-9F Panther jet flying over Korea and getting hit by enemy gunfire.
Someone could have the opinion, would that story work now? Absolutely, because it's sports, but it has that element of it.
If you look around the game, recent years and so forth, I did once say something. Can you imagine A-Rod enlisting in the United States Marine Corps and going over to fight in Iraq or something? No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's just he didn't have as much choice in World War II.
Sure.
Everybody was being taken. He could have been exempt because he was the sole support of his mother, but the public pressure was too great. So he signed up for the Navy, and then eventually they put him in the Marine Corps.
I know you worked on a book about Johnny Pesky, and what an amazing person, really.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed him. After I'd done the Ted Williams book, a woman that was a long time season ticket holder from at Fenway Park, she said, what are you going to do next? And I said, I don't know. It's not my area. I enjoy doing this. And she said, you should do a book on Johnny Pesky. So I did. And I enjoyed many visits up to his house. And got a chance to see him. I still go to a game a year with his son and his daughter-in-law.
Oh, nice.
We didn't go last year for some reason, but we'll hopefully go this year.
What's the process of writing, like for you? Do you lock yourself up? Is it start the family. You know, I'm always intrigued by that.
Well, I was in the music business. I'm retired now. I've been
Yeah.
retired essentially for about 7 years. So it's day and night for me. It's just, I force myself to go to sleep. And then, I wake up in the morning and the first thing I'm thinking of is what I'm going to do next.
Yeah.
And I have so many different projects that if I do get bogged down in one, I'll hop to another. Just 15 minutes before we started talking, I posted a note to SABR saying that I was starting another book on one-win wonders for next year. Players who had one major league win as a pitcher.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And I've already gotten in 3 or 4 answers in just the last 15 minutes of people that wanted to see the list that I'd prepared of good candidates.
That's great. That's
some of them weren't pitchers. Some of them happened to be like a position player that got put in the 9th inning, and then their team came from behind and won, and they ended up with a major league victory.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that stuff. I remember them in Portland. I worked in Portland for 15 years. We had a position player who got the win and got the game-winning walk-off hit, and we said that's probably never happened in the history of the game.
Actually, you should send me that information because I probably want to mention that.
Yeah, Jay Johnson. I remember the game.
What was his name?
His name was Jay Johnson.
Jay Johnson. Okay.
And I can probably send you the box score. And
yeah.
It was really cool. I think he threw a couple of innings. And
was that for the Sea Dogs?
Yeah, and he got a walk-off hit. Yeah, it's one of the most memorable games. 18 innings. It was crazy.
I just made a note of it too.
But plus with baseball, like the odds of him, he had to come up to do the walk-off hit too. The odds of it is that's what I think is great about it, is that the odds of it. I noticed that your background, you the music side, that's pretty cool. Rounders Records, is that?
Yeah, it's just we started in 1970. We just had our 50th anniversary.
Yeah, nice.
We put out over 3,000 albums over time. Just a lot of people that we liked, mostly folk, blues, bluegrass music, and but then some other things over the years.
Would you say, I was talking to a younger person a few days ago, and she kind of what she's doing, working and illustrating and all that, and we kind of agreed that this is probably the best time to be alive if you're creative. You can publish a book on Amazon. You don't need to get a publisher. You can do whatever you want now. Obviously, that lets more people in, but it gives you an easier chance to get your name out there. You can do whatever, right?
Some of the books that I've done, I've self-published them.
Yeah.
I just, I've never had an agent to try to place books and so forth. I just, came up with an idea and I couldn't readily find a publisher. So I just said, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah. That's
and
pretty
they
cool.
They don't get around as well to as many people though, but
yeah. Did you ever get ideas from being at Fenway? Just like something happened?
I'm sure. I can't think of one now, but I spent a lot of time there. So I get some ideas there.
Yeah. Any top moment in the history of your viewing career at Fenway Park?
Well, one of the most famous games at Fenway Park was Game 6 of the 1975 World Series, when Carlton Fisk hit that home run to win the game. I had standing room for that game, and I was positioned so I could look right down the foul line.
Wow.
And I could just see it not quite go foul.
And
I've seen a few no-hitters there over the years. I saw the game where the Red Sox gave up 2 triple plays and won the game. I have yet to see a hidden ball trick. That's something I really like. They don't do it that much anymore, but I would just love to see one. You got to be paying attention. You can't be, wandering around or looking at other stuff, because you've got to notice that the guy has the ball and the base runner can't have noticed. But I'm still hoping for one of those someday.
That's cool. Yeah. It's pretty amazing when you go back and think of all the moments of baseball. But I like what you said about your people change. And I feel like I'm not a big fan of extra innings anymore, because I don't feel like extra inning games are, I've been part of them where, you play 18 innings, like who makes out in that? I think fans don't, it doesn't work for fans. I don't think players like it. But like in 50 years, if we go to this extra inning rule, no one will care. The next generation of fans, they'll grow up that way.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the thing with baseball. You have to accept that sometimes the new generation, it's their turn. And
Right.
yeah, I don't know
Well,
if you had,
I can, I mean, people just have shorter attention spans because there's so many other things competing for attention.
yeah, yeah,
And there's a lot of great stuff out there that actually doesn't have anything to do with baseball.
yeah.
But that's kind of heresy, I realize. But yeah.
But do you think the NFL really kind of pushed that button with baseball because it's blown up in the last 20 something years?
But
Because
why? Why? I don't know why. I mean, in New England, I know why. I started watching it when Bill Parcells came in. There was all
yeah,
kinds of attention about him, and I said, "Well, I don't even understand what's going on here with football." But I just started watching, and then, of course, the Belichick and Brady era. I hardly miss a game, but it's not much dedication involved. It's like 16, or if you're lucky, 19 games, and that's all, as
yeah.
opposed to 162 games.
But also, yeah, but I remember in the 80s, though, it was still 16 games, but I think the games were bad. I remember football being boring, low scoring. I think when they changed the rules for quarterbacks, and you have basically every quarterback who's a star not missing games, and the more points, more yards with the fantasy, it's like they hit a home run, no pun intended.
Yeah.
It was the perfect thing for them to do. And I think that's what really has set that league on fire, because people don't want to watch field goals and defense.
Yeah.
As much as you'll hear old timers say the steel curtain and all that, but nobody now cares. I don't think.
Yeah.
They want to see points, because points, I don't know, that I think it's an easier game to do,
But with baseball, would you rather see a 9-6 game, or would you rather see a 1-0 game?
I'm the 1-0. Yeah.
I don't know. It depends. If the 1-0 game is a no-hitter, I'd rather see the no-hitter.
Yes.
It's so special. A regular, let's say a 3-1 game or something. I mean, it could be brilliantly played. It can be all kinds of great defense, strategy, all kinds of pinch hitters that don't work out, or things of that sort. But I suspect there's something more about a 9-6 game that, people like to see home runs or.
Yeah, but I think the direction of just all or nothing is not healthy, though. At least in football, you do have other ways you can score. Baseball has kind of gone to the strikeout, home run. It's become really, I don't know. Some of the games are really tough to watch, I think. I mean, you have no balls put in play, and then but that for you and I, that might be for the younger fan. They might like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's losing support among young. The demographics are definitely older.
Yeah,
and that doesn't portend well for the future unless there's a way to correct that somehow.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of things I hear, and I don't know. They say the players aren't marketable, but everyone knows who Mike Trout is. I mean, it's not like we don't know who these players are.
Yeah,
I don't know what the answer is to that. Like, should they be doing more commercials, or, I mean, I don't know. Would anyone care?
Right. I definitely see more football players on commercials.
Yeah. So what, any other projects that are coming up that you want to?
Well, let me think about what's coming up. I mentioned the comeback games, the one hit wonders, and then the one win wonders.
Yeah.
I mentioned the ticket project, which somebody else is doing that one. And I'm pretty interested in seeing how he does with that. We've just got a lot of stuff going on. Open for new ideas all the time.
Yeah.
About things. There's a couple of ballpark books coming out. I think one of the next books is going to be on Griffith Stadium from Washington.
Nice.
Just a history book. I never went to a game there, but I'll enjoy reading about some of the greatest games that took place there in years gone by.
If I can submit if you need any tickets, I could always show you some of mine. And if anybody needs to look at, I have some old tickets. Yeah, my dad, I think, has some old Fenway Park tickets.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I've got to rummage through mine. I usually just threw them in a drawer, and so probably a lot of them are still there.
I got an actual book. They sell ticket books where you can put them in the sleeves like baseball cards.
Yeah, great.
And you can display them. Yeah, I wanted to preserve them. Yeah. But see, that's interesting, because like the younger fan now probably doesn't care. But to me, having no more tickets, I would be devastated with that. There's something about that ticket.
I know it's I don't know, it's kind of sad.
Yeah.
You just go into
So
All right.
we're, yep. All right, Bill, that was great.